All right, welcome to a live mobility session. I've been wanting to do a lot of these in the past. I thought, what the heck, let's just throw it online and start doing them now because I'm going to go through some hip mobility, hip stretches. And I thought, why not just start sharing this with a lot of different people? These are things I do every day with clients, with patients all the time. Someone walks in and says, my lower back's bothering me. It's usually your hip joint. All right. Maybe my knee is bothering me. Sometimes that goes back to the hip joint as well. If your lower back or knees are bothering you, good chance it could be your hips. So let's get right into a couple stretches, and then I'm going to kind of jump around, and hopefully you'll find some good stuff here to take home with you, to do at home at the gym, etc. So check it out. I'm using a plyo box. You can use an ottoman. You can use a chair. This is a 12-inch step. So whatever range of motion you have, you can work with. All right. So a couple things. If I'm stretching my hips, you can bring your foot up onto something like this. All right. What this is going to do, it's going to flex my left hip and stretch this, but it's also mainly going to hit this straight leg and stretch this hip down here. All right. I do this hurdle stretch, but you're like stepping over a hurdle. All right. With everyone who comes in at some point during a workout. It doesn't matter. My teenage athletes come in, my 40-year-old moms, my 90-year-olds, they're going to do some sort of stretch like this. All right. Mainly for this back leg. So I'm just going to bring my foot onto something and get a good stretch there. So that's your first goal. That's your first stretch. All right. So I've had people come in, do these stretches, buddies of mine, and they go buy this plyo box. All right. This is about a 30-inch high box. You could set it to 24 inches or 20 inches. All right. So just to stay tall like this, I can tuck my tail and I can get a hip stretch here. All right. So a couple of things to think about as we go through these. Number one is I'm looking at patterns or positions that I want to get into. It's not just that I'm stretching my hip because a hip stretch feels good. I'm thinking about what I want to do that may require me to do kind of a high knee march or step up a step. You're walking up your stairs, doing your laundry, you're sprinting, you're doing a layup in basketball, you're stepping over a baby gate. All right. So you might just be stepping straight forward over something and you want to improve that ability. This is a great stretch for you. All right. So that's one reason we're stretching. That's one reason we're thinking about this. So bring your foot up, stay tall. All right. Just to be very purposeful, intentional with your stretches. So stay tall. You can tuck your tail. All right. Both toes are pointed straight ahead. All right. I'm going to tuck my tail a little bit. All right. Breathe. I can tuck my abs in a little bit in order to just increase that. I can bring this foot back some. All right. And then you can also pay attention to that back leg. Can you straighten that back leg out, that back knee? All right. Does it have to stay bent a little bit? Do whatever is comfortable, but that you feel this stretch. Okay. Stay tall and you can just kind of ease into this and work into this. You're not bouncing. All right. You're not bouncing too much ballistically, we call that. But you're under control. So hit that stretch for a bit. If you want to add a little insult to injury, you can also reach high with the leg, the side of the leg that's straight. Reach high, bend your elbow, and breathe there. All right. That's going to deliver a stretch all the way down that whole side. Everything's connected. All these muscles overlap. My arm muscles overlap with my back muscles, they overlap with my rib cage, down into my obliques and my waist, down into my hips, my legs, my knees, all the way down. All right. So the more you bring these together, the better. So I might hold one leg for a bit and then do a hurdle stretch on the other leg. All right. So one big reason we just want to improve this ability to high knee march, step over things in this straightforward pattern. All right. Another reason we're stretching these muscles is because if you're seated a lot during the day, I'm seated in this position, these muscles are going to get tight. That's why when we stand up from a seated position, it's going to pull in your lower back. It's going to feel a little achy. You're going to just kind of stand and stretch out a bit and then go about your day. One of the reasons we hit this. So you can, every time you stand up from your desk chair or you're doing squats at the gym or you're jumping in a recreational volleyball game, you're not throwing out your lower back because these hip muscles do attach to your lower back bones. All right. So that's standing stretch number one. We're going to do 3 of them. Another one we call it a piriformis stretch. So you can use a box like this. I might use a smaller step, maybe a couch, something like that. And a couple different things you're doing here. I'm going to bring one ankle up, allow this to kind of relax, right? And I'm doing 2 things. One is I'm just allowing this to open up, all right? So I'm going to kind of hit the front of this hip joint, listen to your body, don't let it go too much, right? You want to be under control, all right? A lot of times, especially like in yoga classes and stretch classes, people get into positions and then they just relax and they just let it go a little too much, right? Which means that you're not going to stretch the muscles. You're going to be mobilizing those muscles. You're going to be kind of yanking at the non-contractile tissues like ligaments and cartilage or labrum, your labrum in your joints and things like that. All right. So that's one way, just let that hang there. But the other stretch, then we call this a piriformis stretch, because one of the biggest external rotators or deep butt muscles or glute muscles is your piriformis. I can support myself on whatever bench I'm using and then slowly bring my hips back. And I'm going to feel that stretch in my hip joint and then in the back of my hip and my glutes. All right. I can pull this, I can drop into that and just kind of explore that in different ways. All right. And again, we call this mobility exercises because we're looking at joint mobility, not just the muscles. All right. So we're trying to glue ourselves from this desk chair position, but essentially we are looking at improving a pattern or a movement and then all the smaller movements within the joint itself. All right. And then I can hit the other leg in the same way. Just let that drop, stay tall, and always compare left to right. So my left side is always a lot tighter than my right. All right. That's just kind of what's going on with my my right foot surgeries and different things I've had done, different injuries I've had with basketball. All right. So I'm going to get that stretch, stand up tall, and then with a straight spine, sit my hips back and get a stretch there. So I want to just go through a lot of these stretches, and comment below, ask questions. I'm going to make different videos, but I'm just going to start filming 10, 20 minutes of my normal stretching routine. Hopefully you guys will get some benefits from that. All right. Third one is to get a stretch here and stay tall. And this is going to be more of a quadricep stretch. I'm going to get the front of this thigh muscle, but one of the quadricep muscles, quad is 4. The rectus femoris is one muscle that actually goes up. It's also a hip flexor. All right. So flexing the hip means I'm doing this, right? So I'm going from a straight leg, straight hip to a flexed hip. All right. All the muscles that do that are really get tight. They get shortened. All right. So I'm going to stay tall, get that quadricep. I'm going to tuck my tail, stay tall, and I can feel that in the front of my hip as well. If I want to hit a little more hip and hit that quadricep that stretches, I'm going to step away some, and that's going to help me focus more on the hip. All right. Get that stretch. One leg. The other leg, stay tall. All right. So again, you go to your gym, hit those. All right. And they can be kind of quick. We don't need to hang on these stretches and do 5 minutes of each. But I may go up and just say, how does this feel? Kind of check with my hip here. All right. Check in with my other side. I'm good. Stretch, maybe a high reach, something. And rotate over that. Okay. Then get that piriformis. All right. How do my hips feel here? Stretch that. Good. Hit the other side. Mobilize that a little bit. It's just kind of dusting off a few spots. If those muscles haven't moved in a while, you haven't moved your joints in a while, you've been sitting at a desk chair most of the day, come in, check in with each one of these spots, and then you're good to go. All right. And then if you want to get into a squat, you can squat down. All right. Stay tall, press your knees out, and just kind of work on that mobility and in that seated position as well. So I may sit down and say, okay, I'm a little bit more loosened up. All right. Easier than when I sat down before. All right. So a couple standing stretches to do. And this is after maybe a 10-minute walk outside. You get home and you're going to be at your doorstep. You can do stretches there. All right. So now just a little adjustment. If I go down to the floor. Now you're on the floor. This is something I'm doing with all my clients as well. At some point at the beginning of a workout or the end, we're going to go down to the floor and do a couple stretches. What we often start with is just to lay down. To sit down first, and I'm going to just ask the client to lay down flat, and we might do just what I call a windshield wiper, just a little bit of lightly going back and forth. You can do this in your bed in the morning. All right, and then I'm going to bring my feet wider, and instead of both knees going at the same time, I'm going to bring one knee down. All right, so from this position here, this knee will come down this way, and I'm going to press that knee kind of towards you, towards the camera. All right. And I'm going to extend through that hip. And then I'm going to go this way, and I'm going to press that knee. I can also think of pressing my knee towards my opposite arch. And that feels great. If you've been sitting in this position a lot, all right, remember your body gets good at what you ask it to do most of the time. Meaning if you ask it to sit in a car for 8 hours on your way to Florida this week, if you sit at a desk chair most of the day, your body's going to get good at sitting in a desk chair. So we need to unglue from that position. Your body's just going to shorten some of these muscles because that's where they like to be at. So this is a nice way to extend your hips. So there, I'm going to press. And then I'm going to straighten both legs out. And if you can see this, I'm going to really, as if I'm trying to like reach towards something with my foot, really reach out. But I'm going to reach for my waist and my hip. So what this is going to look like is I'm going to press my hip out along there and then relax. So I'm trying to get as long as I can. I can reach high if I want to get my upper body involved, but just to focus on my hip for now. So I'm just reaching towards the wall and then back, and then I'm going to press with the other side, okay? And this feels great through the waist and the hip, right? And this helps just your shock absorption as far as every step, all right? Your single leg balance and just hitting some of those deeper muscles through your waist, your core, and your hip, all right? So that's what I'll do as well. So those are two that I start with. That one here, and then I'm going to extend both legs out, all right? And then let's look at some bridges. So if I do a couple bridges here, I can just do a regular bridge. If my hips are tight, they don't want to extend, this is going to be a big stretch. So two things happening here. I need the strength of my glutes, my hip extensors to work, but I also need the mobility and flexibility of my legs, all right? So just hit that a few times. And again, that just looks like getting up from a chair. I'm sitting in a chair here, and then I go to stand up, and my hips go straight, all right? My legs will be straight to my knees, but that is what we're working on, just extending your hips, all right? If that feels good enough, then I can do a single leg bridge and just work on the strength and mobility of one leg and one hip, all right? But if this is enough for you, go ahead and just knock that out about 8 or 10 times, all right? And then if we're feeling pretty good going back here, this is always the prerequisite, not only for ages or fitness level, right? But just for whatever you've done that day. I like to start with this stretch here and see, okay, how do my hips feel? Just check in with everything, all good, all right? Then I'll turn this into a seated position in what we call a 90-90 stretch. Now I'll stay in this 90-90 stretch here, all right? And what that means is that both knees are at 90 degrees, hips are at 90 degrees, and I can just sit in this position here, all right? So bring your chest down to your knee. You can open up your chest towards your ankle. That's going to hit a little more hamstring. So just explore this after a workout. You did a squat workout, you did a push-up workout, you ran on a treadmill. Go over to the carpet, go over to the floor, go over to the side, and just knock out this 90-90 stretch, all right? If I'm playing pickup basketball with another 40-year-old guy, 45-year-old guy, whatever, anyone over 30 really, and their knees are barking at them that day, that morning, I'll ask them to do this stretch. And if they present like this, like they can't even sit up straight with this 90-90 stretch, it tells me their hip mobility is very poor, right? They really got to mobilize their hip joints, right? Because then if your hips don't move well, your lower back has to compensate, your knees have to compensate, and you just start breaking down. So if you want to keep playing ball, that's why I have my Weekend Warrior RX. Aging athlete, human being, just training, whatever. So that's the other thing to think about. So I'll go through this every day with my clients, sometimes just in conversation. We'll just sit at the end. And sometimes, we'll just transition back and forth a few times. We may try to work on really engaging some muscles here and transitioning without using our arms and legs, sitting up nice and tall. Other times we'll really get into each pattern, meaning I'm going to kind of get in this 90-90 position, sit up as tall as I can. I'm going to bring my chest down towards my knee. And then I'm going to bring my chest down towards my shin and then towards my ankle. And each one gets to be a little tougher. You're going to hit a different spot. If I got a golfer, but really anyone, I'm going to do some rotations over that front leg. All right. How well do I rotate in this position here? All right. And what I love about this stretch, why this one's so popular, this 90-90 stretch, is because while I'm hitting muscles, all right, I'm hitting my glutes, I'm hitting my hamstrings, all the muscles you think of. It's also about what the joint, what the leg bone is doing in the joint. And, I always nerd out with my anatomy here and there. So when you see your pelvic joint, right, the way this moves around inside the joint is so important. That's what you're hitting as well. You're not just hitting, your hamstring comes down here and your quadriceps comes down here. You hit all these muscles. If I do this anatomically correct, to be more like that. All right. So what you're doing is that you're just swiveling this joint, this ball in a socket. And the more you swivel that around in all these different positions, that's joint health. right? That's going to minimize osteoarthritis, right? Osteo, bone, arth is like articulation, it's the joint. Itis is inflammation. Inflammation of the joint between two bones, right? Bones. All right. And so anything you can do there. So when I sit in this position here, I'm taking my femur bone, right? And I'm actually this won't get. So I'm here, right? And it's just rotating around the joint. So if I rotate this way, it's going to rotate that. If I come around this way, it's going to rotate this way, right? So all these movements are good, not only for the muscles that I'm gluing these different positions, but for the joints as well. All right. So I always like to pull out my skeleton, go through a couple bones to understand what's going on inside of your body. It doesn't matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 80, 90, you can do a modified version of this. If it's most comfortable lying in bed, knock these out in bed. 2 things I recommend in bed. I just did a short on this that I'm about to publish. One is a bridge. All right. So bridge here. I bet if you've been following along and you do those standing exercises and now you've been doing these, this bridge already feels better. All right. Because you need the flexibility and you need the mobility. You need the ability for these muscles to sort of relax as you press up. You need your glute strength. You can also do a bridge with your feet together. You can do about hip width. You can do it wider. All right. I can press out of my heels when I bridge. I can press out of my toes when I bridge. That's going to change the way I'm using my ankles, knees, and hips. All right. So bridging is a great exercise to do before you get out of bed, before a workout, after a workout, just for some extra mobility work. If you're sitting on the couch at the end of the day watching TV, get on the floor and work out and do some of these. Other one is a knee extension. Is the other one I went through on a short. Is that I can work on my knee, but if I want to bring my hamstring and hip into it, what I do is not only do I straighten my knee like this, but I'm going to rotate one way or the other. So my kneecap is facing me right now. What I want to do is extend my knee and then turn my kneecap in. All right. And I'm going to feel a little more stretch down here. All right. So, and then bend, relax, and then straighten my knee and turn my kneecap in. All right. That's another great one for the hip, for the knee, and for the hamstring. And then I can do a couple where I turn my kneecap out. Now, for the most part, we're pretty easy at being in this position here with our knees externally rotated. What we do not have is internal rotation like this. That's why we want to mindfully go into this kind of internal rotation and mobility like that. All right. And so as you straighten your knee, turn the kneecap in, turn that kneecap out. All right. You just kind of work through those. You don't need to light candles. You don't need to go through a whole yoga routine. You don't need to, walk for 30 minutes, but just to go through some of these, it's just like, take time to, clean up your bathroom. You're going to dust your bedroom. You're just going to do little things like that. You're going to brush your teeth. These are just little mobility hacks and mobility exercises you can do throughout the day. All right. So the 2 I just went through though, is that bridge and then going through these exercises here where you're rotating the thigh bone as you're going through. Just to do a couple on this side because I want to get a little bit of a stretch in here. I'm going to do some legs today. So by doing these videos, I'll be ready to knock out my legs. I can get right into my squat routine, my deadlift routine. All right. So comment below, ask any questions, but I want to just go through a couple things like this each day. All right. I want to keep this one simple. All right. But to really get you thinking about when you're stretching, it's to unglue yourself from the positions you're in a lot of the time during the day. If you're in a recliner a lot, sitting in your desk chair a lot, in your car a lot, your hips are going to get locked up. All right. Meaning your nervous system, your brain is going to tell those muscles to shorten to get better at sitting. If you're going to sit for 8 hours, your brain's going to figure out a way to be comfortable sitting for 8 hours. But the better you're good at sitting, the worse you get at running, jumping, in your sand volleyball game tonight. All right. So that's why we're doing some hip mobility. All right. So a couple ideas there. I don't even know how long this is. I want to keep it about that length. But I want to keep shooting these out. Hopefully answer some questions. I'll continue to refine them. I'll work in some anatomy and keep moving, y'all. I'll see you next time. Shut this off. Where's my mouse?